Everybody, Questwise here, and today I want to talk about a game that I received as a Kickstarter backer that I've talked about this a little bit before, but the actual physical copy from the Kickstarter finally arrived, and I want to share this with you. Hopefully it's something that you will truly enjoy because I know I have, and that is the Great American Role-Playing Game by Christopher Gray. This is, as a bookseller, by day, that's my profession. I'm a bookseller. I work for an independent bookstore, and I've always been drawn to literature. I've always been drawn to reading. It's always been a passion of mine. It's really influenced my my role-playing hobby and stuff as well too. And so when I had a chance to jump on this as a Kickstarter backer, as well as a player, I actually got to play in a game with this with the designer over on the Victory Condition Gaming channel. If you get a chance, swing over to that channel. It's highly worth it. I'll put a link down below to his channel. Doug does an amazing channel where he does a lot of actual plays and introduces the world to a lot of cool Kickstarter games, as well as other types of things as well too. And one of them was the Great American Novel role-playing game. This is a game that emulates the concepts and the struggles and the minutia of a great American novel. And it's a game that I find very, very fascinating. Now, I don't know if this is a game for everybody. It's definitely a game in which it sort of assumes that you know a lot of the tropes of the great American novel. We're talking things like, I mean, there's tons of source material to draw from, but think of The Great Gatsby, think of Huckleberry Finn, of Scarlet Letter, of The Last of the Mohicans, where there's a ton of stuff out there that it sort of draws inspiration from. And so I guess in a way it sort of assumes that you know some of these tropes, you've read a lot of these things, but it also has there's a lot of resources in the back of this book that'll help you, even if you haven't read a lot of those stories, to sort of understand the concepts behind them. But it also really inspires you to want to go back, and I know it has for me, to go back and read a lot of those stories. Now, the session that I got to play in, we emulated basically the idea of the book The Godfather by Mario Puzo. This is a sort of gangster type mafia story in which we played members of the Don's family during Easter and the big Easter brunch where he had all his family over, not just family, but all the other people that were sort of part of his posse, and it was under sort of his rule. And as such, things went south very quickly, but a very interesting concept of drawing from those things of family ties and the struggles between different families and friends, internal conflicts and stuff as well too. This is a game that's it's drawn inspiration from Powered by the Apocalypse games. So you do have like playbooks for each of your characters that have sort of a broad archetype that you play under. And they have moves. If you're familiar with the Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, there are certain moves that you can take. But it's structured in such a way that it emulates this great American novel. Any of those kinds of stories you can emulate with this. And in the back of this, due to the Kickstarter being successful, he's added some stuff in the back of here to try to emulate other things too, as well as say like things like James Clavell's Shogun, the kind of Japanese era shogunate time period. So it is flexible and can be brought to things beyond sort of the great American novel, but it's meant to emulate those styles, those themes, those archetypes. It is an immensely fun game, and because it's driven by narration, it's driven by the players. There are things that every player gets, they're called plot points, and they allow the players to sort of take over the narration of the story at a certain point in time. So, for instance, there's no real combat system in this game whatsoever. There are points where you will roll dice based upon whatever move you're trying to do to try to accomplish something. If something comes to the point where the situation garners that there's a sort of a questionable outcome, things like the things that fate would sort of take over, right? So if you're one of the examples they're giving here is that they're sitting in a French cafe and a boy is passing out leaflets. And you're trying to convince the boy that, hey, what you're doing is wrong, and you know, you're working for these crazy people, And so you would roll as a move. You're trying to convince this boy that, hey, you know, there's better things in life to be doing than what you're doing currently. And so you would make rolls for that. But as far as like combat and stuff goes, that kind of falls under the plot point idea. So in the game that we played, that was sort of the Godfather inspired thing, there came a point where guns were drawn and tensions were very, very high. And by spending a plot point, the player who was in charge of the character was able to take over the narration and say, this is what happens in the story. I draw my gun and I kill this guy. There's no rolling for hit points or any of that kind of stuff. It's simply, I make this the truth and it's what has happened. This might not be the kind of role-playing style for everybody, because it puts a lot of agency into the player's hands. And I know sometimes people who are role-playing fans don't like that sort of aspect. They want a game master in control of things, and you know, the fate of the dice actually kind of tell the story. In this, it gives a lot more player agency, the strength to do the things that they want, the direction of the story to go. What's really fun about this, and what I find really interesting about this, is that while one of the players spends a plot point in order to, you know, can take control of the story and put it in a new direction, it puts all the other players in a position where they now need to react to what's now happening. And I found that really, really fun. And I found that it was a really great time. We had a really great experience, and I thought it was an amazing thing. I jumped on the Kickstarter right away after being able to play that game. I've heard there have been other sessions of even more modern things, like a session that was done based on Stephen King's The Shining, in which all the players were authors going to a writing retreat at the Overlook Hotel. So there's a lot of flexibility to this. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of a historical themed type thing, though you can do that kind of stuff. And I think that I would definitely like to do those kinds of games. But if you have a chance, I believe this is now available through Drivethrurpg as a print on demand as well as a PDF. Definitely worth checking out. If you're a fan of literature, if you're a fan of reading, you know, books, and that kind of stuff, definitely worth checking out. It was a very, very great time, and I can't wait to, we do monthly game nights at the store, which I work at, and I can't wait to bring this to the table and to do games based on that kind of thing as well, too. The other interesting thing about this game is that there's not, I guess if you're doing a sort of one shot that you want to sort of do at a convention or a game night or something, you can sort of set up you know, as a game master, a narrator, author, you can sort of set up the game ahead of time. But what's really designed to do is that you sit down at the table with no preparation whatsoever, and it's all based upon a conversation with the players as to how they want the game to run and what they want to emulate. And if there's ever a doubt, people don't really know what to draw from, there are some great charts in here that you simply roll on, and it will give you ideas to draw from, or you can just randomly roll up something and have a game based on this again too. So the Great American Novel role-playing game by Christopher Gray, definitely worth checking out. Until next time, I'm Questwise, and I am out.